Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 16th of July. Today is Saturday, today we have some updates and let's discuss them. And first of all, let's discuss the Ukrainian losses. During this week there was a lot of artillery and rocket strikes and we discussed every day the Ukrainian losses during this week. And I tried to calculate all losses and tried to calculate all brigades, their location and so on. And the bottom line is during just the only rocket strikes, the Ukrainians lost around 4,626 soldiers, around 161 armored vehicles, and around 10 artillery systems. And this is the losses just for 1 week. And if we say that, let's say that 1 month has like something like 4.5 weeks, we can say that the losses, the Ukrainian losses is around just with the artillery strike is around 20,000 soldiers. A few days ago, we got some report from the Ukrainian military authorities, from the West authorities, that they announced that Ukrainians are losing around 20,000 soldiers per month. And if we just take a look at this table one more time, we see that their losses, the Ukrainian losses just from the artillery strikes and rocket strikes is around 20,000 soldiers. Of course, this information is based on the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation. Maybe they have some speculation and so on. Maybe their calculation is softly, but we see that the losses are very high. And those losses that Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation provides, these losses doesn't include the number of the Ukrainian losses on the ground. So I believe that the losses are much more higher, and they are somewhere around 25,000 soldiers, or maybe even more, around 30,000 soldiers, including the losses among soldiers, among officers, among equipment that were occurred by the rocket attacks, strikes, or the battle on the ground. So the losses are very high, and the Ukrainians are saying that their loss is just 20,000 soldiers. Now let's talk about the Saturday's report of Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation. And according to information they provided, the Russians now they're totally concentrated one more time on the Seversk area, in this area. And according to information they provide, they managed to attack the 115th Mechanized Brigade that was located in Seversk area, in this area. You see there are a lot of icons, a lot of like fire icons, meaning that the Russians are trying to crack this nut. They're not even count their artillery, their rockets and so on. And according to the Russian Ministry of Defense report, they managed to destroy around 600 soldiers. Around 600 soldiers of 115th Mechanized Brigade. I was trying to locate these 115th on this map, on the map of this position, and to tell the truth, I couldn't find this Mechanized Brigade. Maybe it's somewhere, their main base, somewhere in the west of Ukraine, and they brought this Mechanized Brigade to reinforce the forces that located in Seversk. Now, to tell the truth, if I find, of course, I will update you, but for now, I couldn't find their location of this brigade. So just for one strike, their losses is around 600 soldiers. The Ukrainians, they're leaving this area. A few days ago, we got report that they moved around 500 soldiers from Seversk towards Artyomovsk. And today, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported about the 600 losses. So we see that Seversk is going to fall in a few days. And the Ukrainians trying to do their best from their side. They start mobilization among civilians in this area, trying to get as much as possible soldiers from this area. They understand, because as soon as the Russians enter this town, they won't be able to use this mobilization resource. So that's why they're taking everybody, every single man who are able to stand on their feet and to hold any weapon. And of course, it's some kind of very big catastrophe for this area, because we understand that these soldiers won't be able to return back because of the fact that they are like under is an army and so on. Furthermore, there was another 123rd Brigade of the territory defense in Nikolaev. These days, there was a lot of impacts in Nikolaev, and there was an impact in this town, strike in this town, and according to this strike, the Ukrainian soldiers lost around 200 of soldiers. 200 of soldiers, that's also a very big number, and around 13 armored vehicles as well. Furthermore, if we are talking about Seversk, this area one more time, there are very big losses, and Ukrainian soldiers start refusing to continue their mission. They drop their weapon and they're running from this area without even an order. If we take a look at the Russian sources map, there is like two icons one is under the title like desertion. That means that Ukrainians are not willing to continue and they leave their position without even an order. And there is like an update and video how the soldiers of the 241st Territory Brigade are leaving this area. There were no updates about the real number of the soldiers that left, but if we take a look at this video, we see that there is like few equipments, few soldiers, maybe some few dozens. I think that they left this position and they demanded their commanders to move them back to the west of Ukraine, because their main base, their main position is on the west. So we'll follow this situation as well. We see that the entire front line is collapsing in this area. Furthermore, if we're talking about this area, the Russians continue attacking the headquarters in this area, and they attacked the 18th Assault Brigade headquarters near Serebryanka. So this Serebryanka, and they're saying that they attacked the headquarters of 18th Brigade. If we take a look at the disposition map, this 18th Brigade is located in here. So it's like a softly icon showing their like main position, but we understand that this 18th Brigade is stretched on this front line, and some forces, some headquarters were in Serebryanka, maybe a few battalions, one battalion in Serebryanka, one battalion in Veselye, and so on. And the headquarters of the forces that located in Serebryanka were struck by the Russians and destroyed. So that's mean that this force is disorientated already. So we'll see and follow what is going to be next in this area. Furthermore, the Russians continue striking, destroying the warehouses in this area, and so on. And yesterday there was another important update. I understand that it might be some kind of rumors, of course, some kind of talks and some kind of things that the Russians want to think that it's a fact, and they want to believe that because I understand that maybe it's some kind of impossible thing than possible. The Russians confirmed the second time yesterday that they managed to get HIMARS. If you remember last week on Monday, I came to you with the update that the Russians bought HIMARS from the Ukrainians, and the price was around $8,000. And yesterday they gave another confirmation from few sources that they got these HIMARS. They're not publishing any videos and photos. I'm sure that maybe because of some kind of to be on the safe side, not just from the Russians, but also I'm sure that there are a lot of spies in Ukraine, and just to protect them and to keep them safe, not to bring them any problems with that. So that's why there is no photos and videos. And if it's true, I'm sure that sooner or later we're going to see those HIMARS under the Russian flag. If we're talking about the combats on the front line, we see that the main clashes on the near the Seversk, and mainly that because of the fact that a lot of forces are leaving this area, and the Russians understand that they're just rearguard forces. I'm sure that there are just territory defense forces, the less equipment, less experience, and they're just doing their job. They're just giving opportunity for the regular Ukrainian forces to leave this area and take their ammunition, their vehicles, to mobilize as much as possible and to get everything they can from this area. Maybe even this evening we're going to see some updates that Seversk has fallen and so on. But for now, there are still fightings, there are still clashes. You see that the gray line is right in front of Seversk, and that So we'll follow this situation. If we are talking about the other front lines, we see that the Russians are storming doing some offensive operation towards Ugledarska power plant, trying to get this area as well. The Russians feel that this entire front line is collapsing, and sooner or later they're going to see how this entire front line is going to fall. So that's why they're pushing, trying to find the weak place, weak position, the weakest forces in this area, and so on. Now let's talk a little bit one more time about the Ukrainian offensive operation. As I understand, if you remember, this week the Ukrainians announced about the start of offensive operation in the south, and that announcement forced the Russians to change their geography of their rocket strikes. There, if you take a look at this table, and there is like area where the Russians were attacking, and mainly during this week and the end of this week, the Russians were attacking the area near Seversk. But as soon as the Ukrainians announced that they are starting some offensive operation on the south, the Russians were forced to change their geography and they started shelling the south of Ukraine. We understand the Russians, of course, because they gave us some reports, some updates that the Ukrainians reinforced this area heavily. There are a lot of forces, as well as we can see on the east of Ukraine. There are a lot of big number of forces on the south. There are a lot of mechanized, motorized brigades, a lot of territory defense brigade. This area is very close to the border, to Odessa, and we understand that the area has a lot of modern West weapons, like in Laos, like HIMARS, like the howitzers, the West howitzers, and so on. But as I understand, the Ukrainians didn't start their offensive operation. Now I understand by the end of this week that that announcement was some kind of a trick. The Ukrainians were trying to move the Russian focus, and they did this because during this week, during like Wednesday and Thursday, the Russians were concentrated just on this area, and that allowed the Ukrainians to regroup in the Siversk and Artyomovsk and to move their forces from this area towards Artyomovsk, Konstantinivka, just to retreat and to save the soldiers, and just to receive some kind of few days of to breathe in, to relax, to rest. I'm not sure that you can relax there, but at least the geography of rocket impacts, rocket strikes changed from this area towards the south. If we take a look at the West sources map, we see that this map is not updated, but we understand that the Russians are pushing. They are pushing, like as usual, they're pushing in few directions towards Seversk, and they're pushing, trying to establish final control over the road of life in Past, that where the Charlie group is located. There are still heavy clashes around Yakovlevka. The Russians took control over Novokamyanka, Strypovka, and now they're somewhere in the suburbs of the Bach of Solidar. There are still heavy clashes. Very heavy clashes in the south. As you can see, even Westmar's sources map show us about these icons, saying that the Russians are trying to push and to encircle the soldiers that located in Ugledarskaya power plant. If you take a look at this position map, this area is most protected from in comparison with any other area. There are 2 mechanized brigade, 13th mechanized brigade, and 72nd mechanized brigade. Furthermore, the Ukrainians moved here their national battalions, but the Russians are pushing and trying to encircle. If we take a look at the Russian source move, there are also some videos and some updates that the Russians are under very heavy shelling in town Dolomitna, and that they're trying to push and circle this area, and to support the Ukrainians, to support the Ukrainian forces in this area, like to give them. I'm not sure that they're able to hold this, to keep this area for a long time, but at least I'm sure that now the Ukrainians are trying to solve one important issue. They're trying to evacuate and to save as much as possible vehicles they can. And with this reason, they are shelling heavily the very territories, like the backup territories of the Russians. there was some HIMARS attack, HIMARS strike towards the town Kadievka. A lot of drones are flying in this area, trying to spot the warehouses, the Russian warehouse in this area. If you take a look at the south, you see that this entire area is also under very heavy shelling, because using forces that located in Gorlovka and Kadievka, this area, the Russians are reinforcing their offensive operation on the south. As you can see, this area is under very heavy shelling as well. The Ukrainians trying to reduce the road, trying to establish some fire control over the road that connects Donetsk and Gorlovka. Now let's talk about Avdiivka. Yesterday we discussed and we talked that the Russians took control over Kamyanka, this one. But this morning, as far as I understand, the Ukrainians start some kind of counter-offensive operation, and for now there is no update about the fact that the Russians are still in Kamyanka. Maybe the Ukrainians managed to force them back. And of course, mainly this is because the Ukrainians also have some mechanized brigade in this area, and as I remember, during this week they reinforced this area with a lot of forces. As you can see, just in this region, in this area, there are 3 brigades: 25th Airborne Brigade, 110th Defense Brigade, and 56th Mechanized Brigade. Furthermore, as I know, there is some kind of rotation in this area, and the Ukrainians are moving more and more fresh forces to Avdiivka. And if you take a look at the Russian sources map, you're going to see the same picture. A lot of icons of very heavy shelling, of a lot of very heavy clashes. The only update about the situation is that the Russians established control over the road that connects Avdiivka and Konstantinovka, this one. I'm not sure that this is a very great idea to use this road, but maybe it's some kind of marking that they're showing that the Russians are pushing, and of course their main direction in this area to establish control over Krasnogorovka, this town. And Kamyanka in this case is very important, because this Kamyanka, this town, is encircled by some lakes, some forests. So that means that if you are able to establish control over this town, over this small village, that means that Ukrainians are no longer able to push your back. And if you control this Kamyanka, you have a very beautiful, very well prepared, very well positioned to control this landfill, this very big landfill that Ukrainians are using to navigate their artillery strikes all along the area around this Avdiivka in Donetsk, and this small bridgehead that the Russians managed to establish. There were some attacks. The Russians are pushing, and of course, as soon as they took control over Kamyanka, now they're trying to establish control over Krasnogorovka. And by taking Krasnogorovka, we can say that the Avdiivka operation has started. Let's take a look at the West sources map. You see that the West source map also showing us that they have established some control, but to be more precise, the Russians have control, at least according to the previous yesterday information, around this area. And with taking Kamyanka, you see this river, the Ukrainians won't be able to cross this river back, only if they have some forces somewhere here. And from this area, now they're able to control everything that located in this area. And the most important, by taking this position, they are able to also to fix this road. This is the only road the Ukrainians are able to use to reinforce Krasnogorovka. And as I understand, the Russians continue their operation in this area. By taking Krasnogorovka, if the Russians are able to take this town, of course, they will be able to establish fire control over north, over this plant. And they will be able, making some kind of very big hook, some kind of like this, they will be able to attack these towns on the north. So Krasnogorovka is very important just for one reason: to cut this supply road. If they are able to do this, the forces from Avdiivka are no longer able to reinforce the forces in Berdichi and Stepnovo. So as I see, there are very heavy clashes there, and maybe the next week they will try to fix the situation and establish control over this town. So we'll follow. And if they're able to do this, we can say that the battle for Avdiivka has started. And maybe because of the situation, maybe because of the situation in Donetsk, because if you take a look at Donetsk, this town is still under shelling, and mainly the Ukrainians are shelling the central part. There is like an icon that some civilian buildings is destroyed and where civilians are living, because the Ukrainians are shelling this town without aiming. If we're talking about the Russians, they're trying to search some military objects and to attack them. But if we're talking about the Ukrainians, they're just shelling to fix the Russians and to make some panic and critical situation in this town. And there are a lot of losses. I didn't calculate the losses in Donetsk for a week, but I will try to do this in the next period. But according to information I have, the approximate losses among civilians is around maybe 50 civilians. So that's a lot, and we see that this situation is very critical. So maybe even before the Russians, so not even before, I'm sure that the Russians will try to do operation in Avdiivka and Bakhmut, Seversk, like at the same time in the parallel mode, and trying to solve these two issues. Because if we're talking about Bakhmut and Seversk, it's strategic direction. They need this just for one purpose, to get the Slaviansk-Kramatorsk. But if we're talking about Avdiivka, we understand that this is the vital question, because the Russians need to push the Ukrainians from this town. If we're talking about the other front lines, there is no updates. Just the important thing that near Chuguyev, the Russians did some offense, some impact, some rocket strike, and they killed some headquarters where they managed to kill 5 higher officers. They didn't told about their ranks. Maybe they're just colonels, maybe the generals, who knows, but it's a higher rank officers. And there was some headquarters, and the Ukrainians were using these headquarters to coordinate the Ukrainians on this site near Chuguyev, near Stary Saltov, near this area. And that's also a big success for the Russians. And that's it for today. As you can see, there are not much updates, just the front lines battled all along the front lines. The Russians are trying to push. Today, with the patrons, we're going to discuss this table in more details about the Russian progress during the entire week, trying to understand the regions, the geography of the rocket strike, and so on. And tomorrow we're going to build some projection for the further week, what the Russians are planning to achieve during the next week, which towns is the major has the major priority for them, and so on. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon. Military Summer channel reminds you that we condemn any violence in Ukraine. Have a good weekend. Bye bye.